getting things started off here, 2024. Since early 2023, we've heard a lot about AI. 2024 has just continued that trend in large, and specifically, what we are hearing and seeing a lot of is AP automation, invoicing automation, document processing automation. From traditional platform integrations, RPA, AI, and beyond, we're seeing new technologies, new companies. We're hearing eager CFOs, some anxious IT people, but overall, we're seeing the adoption of these technologies really kick off, and we're hearing a lot of people talk about it. Bhavesh, I want to throw this over to you, just given your time in the industry, your experience. What are you starting to see? Are these trends starting to really have an impact? And if not an immediate impact, when do you expect to really start seeing these technologies impact companies today?
Yeah, so I think if you really look at it, right, so just the recent past that we all lived through, the two things that have actually been like top of everybody's mind is like, there were so many memes and jokes made about supply chain a couple of years ago. So everybody got to know about supply chain. And then, of course, supply chain hype cycle probably got converted into AI hype cycle. And so this accounts payable automation or source to pay, AI enablement, they actually go hand in hand. So it's a classic scenario where people realize how important it is to actually, do overall supply chain management well, including paying the suppliers on time and, making sure that that process is very tightly controlled and simplified. At the same time, you can use AI to do so. So I think it is here to stay. And that's the reason why we are seeing the trends that we are seeing with respect to source to pay automation and AI enablement to do so.
Yeah, and Bhavesh, we're seeing our colleagues in the industry not only agree, but people like Gartner, Forbes, they're polling industry leaders, and they're hearing the same thing. Not only with the expectation that it will be a major market mover through the end of this year, through 2025, but that people are really targeting it for the benefits, faster processing time, lowering human error, and it's specifically with AI, and I know we'll touch on this later, lowering the cost of implementation, especially when it comes to invoice processing, where the historical cost of training data extraction technologies has been high, right? And I want to dive into that a little bit, and given your time at UiPath, really expand on this a little bit. Look, everybody on this call has seen some sort of source to pay AP automation. They've seen, invoicing automations, and these have traditionally been done through custom code, BPM, RPA. You have, standalone solutions like the Abbeys of the world, Hyperscience, so to speak. These solutions have existed. So before we dive into the AI of it all, so to speak, I really want to talk a little bit about the problems we're trying to solve and how we've traditionally tried to solve them. So, Bhavesh, setting you up here for one quick answer, give me the two problems that you've been historically most passionate about solving with AP automation, invoicing automation, finance and accounting automation.
Yeah, absolutely. So like one of the common things that I've actually noticed across my time in managing supply chain functions is I would love everybody to be on some type of EDI module or something, so everything just goes through properly. But I always had some country suppliers or some of my single source or sole source suppliers that will invariably be doing paper invoices. And I want to make sure that I capture it timely so that I can, not waste time processing it. And my relationship with those suppliers is actually going to stay better by making sure that I pay them accurately and timely. So that's something that, when we think about intelligent document processing technologies, they are actually very helpful with that. But now they just do one portion of the process, right? Then there are so many this is where the AI actually comes into the play. The rules that, okay, I had like delegation of authority rules that somebody has to actually make sure that everything is approved by this person or that person. We need to make sure that we are checking for duplications, right? We are trying to make sure that if somebody's trying to commit a fraud by having, different area where to send payment to. So these are the type of things that actually AI is able to really help us with, and make sure that the end-to-end process is streamlined, and we are making sure that the processes are doing what they are supposed to do, and making sure that the quality is there as well as the speed. And that's really what we are solving with our end-to-end solution that has AI infused in it.
Yeah, and Bhavesh, I really want to dive into more of these capabilities later on in our conversation, but specifically, what I'm really excited about is the in-flight AI capabilities, where we're seeing these be applied to traditional AP automation, but really ramping up the effectiveness of things like GL coding. I've mentioned data extraction already, and certainly things like SLA management. Historically, where I've been very invested in this is the upfront just data cleansing. A lot of these supplier databases are challenging to work with, especially as you're doing data extraction. And we're even seeing improvements there in terms of how that data is applied. So as I mentioned, we're going to dive into this a little bit, but beyond solving the capacity issues, what capabilities are you seeing AI start to bring to the AP space? And you could talk about in-flight, you could talk about larger technologies as a whole. I'll leave that up to you, and we can go from there.
Yeah, so I think if we think about the two scenarios, so like IDP, for example, the intelligent document processing itself are having a lot of enhancements with the generative AI models that are getting infused into it, where before, if you had to like train the models for 2 months, 3 months, and it will take you a while to get to like higher 90% accuracy rate. The generative AI models are actually making sure that you can get to that higher straight through processing rate much faster without having to train data a lot. The question will be that, okay, how do you just continue to use that for not only the invoice data extraction, but to be able to do some other things with respect to, okay, now that you've done that, how do I automatically know with its help that, hey, these are the suppliers that if I pay earlier, I'm going to actually capture my dynamic discount and things like that. So our solution that because we actually, put together different technologies that are best in the breed, we can allow that end-to-end solution and make sure that the customers are getting benefit from that.
Yeah, Bhavesh, capturing those dynamic discounts is very interesting. We have a few customers that I know you and I personally work with, where there's a delay in just them receiving their invoices, and that's preventing them from capturing some of these discounts. Or in certain cases, they're getting penalized, for late payment. So being able to effectively analyze and identify those scenarios, and then of course warn either AP processors, management, or the responsible upstream party that this is occurring is critical path, because it's it affects revenue, it affects the bottom line. So there's a lot of gain that can be had there. The other area I want to touch on in a little bit is chat with your data. I know that's very big, especially when it comes to processing money. People want to know where their invoice is. They want to know the status of payment. I want to touch on that in a minute. But I want to, AI, we've been hearing about it, so much. And, I think we didn't hear about Blue Prism. We didn't hear about Automation Anywhere on Good Morning America. Yet yesterday I turned on my TV and Michael Strahan's talking about the new OpenAI model. He doesn't know what's going on, but it's everywhere. It's a true hype cycle, unlike what we've seen in recent history. So I guess my question for you is, how is this cycle differentiating from the RPA, BPM cycles that we previously saw? And do you feel organizations can jump right into the solution, or is there a automation technology baseline or threshold that needs to be met before they go?
Yeah, so I think I look at this cycle as two things. So most of the technologies that we've actually deployed, they've been always there to help humans augment whatever they were doing, with doing it better, faster, cheaper, all of that stuff, right? The element that AI brings in is the innovation aspect, and that's the reason why I think this is fundamentally different. So like even if you look at, okay, what are some of the technology changes in historical world that happened. Okay, we went from horse to, like, okay, car and this and that, but it still was like doing the transportation. With the AI, because of the insights that you can get, it can give you the things that you had not thought about, and because it is learning from the machines itself. And that's the reason why I think this is a foundationally a different technology than everything else that we've seen. And that's what we are seeing in actually some of our customers' scenarios as well, that when we actually put some ML models there, it is giving us insights from the data that we weren't even thinking of. Like, okay, when I manage supply chain, I know that these are the things I'm trying to look for, which payments are delayed, which shipments are delayed, where there may be fraud. But when you actually let the AI loose, it can give you so many insights that you didn't even imagine were possible. And that's the reason why I think this is fundamentally very different.
Right, yeah, being able to bring new value to the table, unidentified value to the table specifically, is something that organizations are looking for, right? And historically and still today, it's about bringing in the right people, the right headcount makeup in order to generate new ideas and keep pushing the organization forward. But in some areas that can be subsidized, by AI, and by these new models that are coming out, which is exciting. And so, I want to circle back to the second part of this question, Bhavesh, which is, this is all very exciting. There's clearly value. It's being integrated with every technology. Is this something that organizations can jump into, or do they need to have previous experience with traditional automation?
So at the end of the day, everything we are trying to do is actually for some type of process output, right? So when we think about a process with different inputs and different outputs, you're trying to actually either get to those outputs faster, or you're trying to get more insights about those outputs or from the process itself. So being able to understand the process and what it does or it's supposed to do is very important, and that's the reason why I believe that having some type of BPM and other intelligent automation understanding is actually very important. At the same time, one of the key area that is very, very important that we help our customers with is the data integrity part of it, right? So making sure that, and you can use automation to do those things, for example, that how do you dynamically update your databases? How do you make sure that the data is cleansed, transformed, so that when AI is actually, using it, it is going to give you the correct answer, or it is going to give you the insights that are meaningful. And that's another area where I think just letting AI loose completely is not a good idea, because it still has those hallucinations that we talked about. Of course, right. The models are becoming better, generative AI side, but the non-generative AI side in scenarios as well, where we would want to have AI actually provide those insights, provide those suggestions, provide even the full answer. But in my opinion, if you make a one misstep, right, it can be so damning that I would prefer that we actually wrap automation to do the human in the loop.
Right.
And we can decide, that's where we can decide with AI or automation that which scenarios we want the humans to actually have a final, hey, yeah, I'm okay with this. And of course, as we know, the machine learning models run and learn when the humans are actually validating something. So I think that automation is a good way to operationalize the AI for the end-to-end scenarios, rather than just doing one versus the other.
Right. And so distilling the answer a little bit, not necessarily automation, but having experience going through a similar process where you're really getting down to, what is the value that my current business process is bringing, understanding that process, understanding the data behind the process, and then properly implementing the technology behind it. So whether that's ERP, RPA, BPM, it's more about the actual process to get there than it is the actual tool. Is that correct?
Yeah, you captured it very accurately.
Great. And then I want to just touch on one thing, and we'll dive a little bit more into specific API opportunities. But is there one specific value driver that really excites you about this next generation of API tools that we're seeing on the market?
So yeah, I think so. A lot of those AP tools that are there, they normally just capture one area or couple areas of the end-to-end process. What, excuse me, what I'm excited about is actually, I'll give you an example. That when we think about AP automation, we are actually, of course, using the IDP to extract the data and all that. Now you take it to one of the other, not quite high, but a very important topic, which is ESG, sustainability reporting, right? So now, if you think about it, because you are getting invoices from the utility companies, from your freight providers, from your suppliers, you, from the AP perspective and combining the IDP, have a better way to actually help with your sustainability reporting and sustainability management than actually keeping it separately. So these are the type of things that how do you reuse this automations and AI to drive multiple objectives and multiple improvements is really what excites me. And that's why some of these technology enhancements in IDP and AIs are actually, in my opinion, very, very groundbreaking.
Yeah, and going even beyond sustainability, right? It's a question of usage, whether it's you have a fleet of cars and you're tracking the mileage and you want to see trends over the past year, or you're looking at corporate spend on certain classifications of, invoices or vendors. That data is now available to you, or more easily accessible than it historically was using RPN. So I want to circle back to this hype cycle a little bit. We hear it everywhere, AI's in everything. But traditionally where we see a lot of organizations starting is with the chat for your data. It's very popular, and what we were just on, it's about surfacing that data effectively so organizations can make decisions, so that people can more quickly action, whether it be a ticket for IT or a request from a customer. It's surfacing it to make those actions just that much closer to their fingertips. Can you speak a little bit to what we've seen with chat with your data and how it's impacting the space?
Yeah, so the chat with your data element, like spend analytics, is a very good scenario and very good area where we've seen customers use it, right? So being able to say that, hey, which suppliers and what type of spend we are doing, being able to actually combine some of those categories because of the AI transformation of the data, we can say that, hey, this word says bolt this, but another word for the bolt and maybe it's written as BLT, being able to like automatically aggregate it to be able to do the spend analytics on a category side, on a supplier type side, and then comparing it to like, okay, when I get to this spend with this type of supplier, I'm going to make sure that I'm gonna get at a different discount threshold than I was. So those type of insights that we see from chat with your data have been so enormously beneficial to our customers that it actually has allowed them to do several of these things much better than they would have thought about from past.
Right, and it it feels like the requirement of clean, strong, meaningful data when you're using AI is driving a lot of customers and companies that we're seeing in the marketplace shift from their traditional roles to data first, data forward companies because of just the underlying requirement, and that in turn is leading to a lot of the outcomes you said, right? Desiring more insights into this data that they're generating outside of chat with your data, right? Which again, everybody hears about it. There were three specific areas that we've seen a lot of noise, right? The invoice extraction, GL coding and processing, and how it integrates in the end-to-end process, like you were saying, with some of the analytics on potential savings, and not just savings but potential discounts, right? Talk to me. How are we seeing these technologies drive additional value beyond kind of the narrow area we've talked so far, but not just drive value in terms of the process, but on the actual project implementation where we're installing these capabilities?
Yeah, so the capabilities wise, like one of the ones that you have there here, which is actually pre-trained invoice processing. Now, one scenarios that we see all the time in the service type of suppliers or in the big projects that the customers are actually, implementing, and they need multiple suppliers, is several times the non-PO invoices, right? So we have customers that are actually doing, for example, the GL coding based on the machine learning for non-PO invoices, knowing that, hey, for this type of services or this type of scenarios, this is how I'm going to code, whether it is based on some rules that you originally may define, but then learning with machine learning, they are actually using those type of scenarios. So when we think about the overall project of deploying the AI into accounts payable, the beauty is, like, you can start with the basics, bread and butter of, let's say, invoice processing automation. But you can actually go beyond with respect to, like, okay, how are you maintaining your supplier data? How are you making sure your supplier relationship management is correct? How do you actually make sure your contract life cycle that you have with a supplier that may have a budget threshold? So having the insights for those can be actually done. The purchase info record that you have in your master data versus what you see in the invoices, and actually doing some type of comparison and some type of insights. These are all the various things that when I look at it, it goes way beyond just the AP automation, but it truly helps with overall supply chain management. The only thing it actually misses is, okay, your demand planning and supply planning and all of those core inventory management and S&OP things, but other supplier relationship management from procurement side, end-to-end processes are actually very easily benefiting from the AI and automations we've been talking about.
Yeah, I want to circle back to one thing you just mentioned, the GL coding. Obviously, I have a lot of personal experience in it. It's just recently we were going and implementing self-healing processes where the bot's trying to make a match. It can't make the match. You have user intervention. It updates the database. And so the next time it works. And with these new technologies, they're identifying the redundancies before we get to that point. They're almost self-healing before you need to actually heal the data. So when you're coming in with the actual process implementation, it's going that much more smoothly. So I want to pull out a little bit, look at the bigger picture here in terms of the industry. With RPA, we saw Blue Prism, UiPath, Automation Anywhere, Pega, WorkFusion originally. There was competition, and ultimately was sifted out to the big three, but I really don't think it compares exactly to the arms race we have seen with these different AI tools, right? You have your Googles, obviously your OpenAI, the list goes on and on, Databricks, what have you. But everybody has an opinion, right? Which is just as important. It's very polarizing depending on if you're a Google first company, a Microsoft first company. Do you feel there's any overexposure? Do you see any risk with the amount of noise this is creating? Like, how do you see this impacting organizations, especially the C-suite?
Yeah, actually, I talked to a lot of the C-suites, and one of the concerns that a lot of them are right now dealing with is that because nobody wants to be left behind, they are actually basically, just making a lot of budget available to just make sure that they have sprinkles of everything, and so that they're not going to really miss anything. But I think rather than that, the way I see it is, so, of course, there is a business leadership and the business process that, hey, what are the things that are important for this process's success? And then you have people like us, for example, that is in this technology space, their own, the digital transformation leadership people in the company, or even the, hardware technology people that some of the product companies may have. They also have a lot of these learnings that they understand what is going on in the ecosystem. Maybe we can help them as well, but they should be very mindful about, hey, this is what we are trying to achieve. So let's not just sprinkle everything and create a big mess, because it should be very simple that, hey, we have to make sure our data is collected and accurate and being updated automatically, right? We have to make sure that we are getting some enormous insight that we as humans hadn't thought about it, and then automating the actions from that insight, and then having those actions be validated where they make sense, so that we've seen several examples where nobody validated and people got sued for it, and people made a lot of mistakes and things like that. And then securing your data, right? Making sure that, because when we work with customers, we are making sure that, okay, they are taking advantage of ML models from outside, but their data is not being used to train those models, right? So these are like very foundational things that we need to understand, because one model versus other model could be, marginally better. But like we used to talk about in inventory management, hey, when you increase that service level from 98 to 99%, the amount of inventory that you may have to invest in is going to be crazy expensive. So let's make sure that we are not like just spending so much time and energy and money into like, oh, this model can be better, that model can be better. Let's understand what we are trying to achieve, and then be very picky. And that is exactly, I think, the sweet spot where people like us in WonderBotz can help the customers to be their advisors and even challengers, as well as partners in supporting them in making sure they don't feel they are leaving behind, but they are achieving the right progress the right way.
Yeah, and the sentiment sounds a bit like hurry up but slow down, right? Hurry up, but let's make sure we have sure footing. And we're seeing it, you described it. These executives are allocating budget. They are, making headlines because they're saying we need to go ahead, we're going to invest this much in AI. But then the reality of the situation is internally, there are hurdles that need to be covered, whether it's data security, data cleansing. But then there's also the, first mover anxiety, right? If they're allocating all this, it'll be a highly or more public failure internally, right? That okay, we tried and we failed. So there's a need to, especially with what we're seeing now, fail fast and learn from your mistakes, or make sure you're taking every possible step to get it right along the way. And I think this, segues nicely into our next segment, which is organizational readiness. Very important. So we touched on, should organizations jump right into AI? Do they need to have some baseline of automation capability? What we really said is maybe it doesn't need to be automation, but you need to understand the process of how to implement. So just because your executives and stakeholders, they want to have it implemented, doesn't mean you can just go ahead and do it. But it seems like right now, especially given where we are with this coming week, it's almost more important, or just as important, to have a strategy and know where you will use AI. Whether it's right now or in 6 months, you really want to have a perspective and a strong opinion on it. Is that a safe assumption here, Bhavesh?
Yeah, and I think so. And I think like this is why I like accounts payable solution type, right? So if you really did the accounts payable AI infusion, right, you would get a lot of stakeholders actually be bought into and understanding what these different technologies are, right? Because you're getting your supply chain people, your quality people, your manufacturing people, your operations people, your finance people. They are all seeing what is happening, because the accounts payable touches all of, even though it's sometimes managed by finance or shared services, they all can see how upstream and downstream processes actually were benefiting from AI infusion. So choosing one area to actually focus on, and that's where it's your POC or pilot, that hey, all of these models, all of these human in the loop, all of those areas that we talked about that are important for right AI implementation, you can observe them, you can learn from them by choosing an area like source to pay, and even within that accounts payable AI infusion. And that's the reason why we chose this topic. And we've been talking about some of the things that they can get benefit from the AI in accounts payable, and that's why I'm very interested and have seen customers benefiting in this area.
So you're a CFO, you're in F&A, you're an AP processor. These the conversations have been happening around the organization. Give us quickly a few items that organizations should be looking at to inevitably prepare for these next generation AI AP technologies. can be 1 or 2 points. Doesn't need to be one.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be just really these two things. One is going to be all about IDP and the IDP's enhancements to intelligent document processing, just to again spell it out. The enhancements of it, how fast you can actually get to the final outcome, and the AI's help that's making IDP even more intelligent and faster. That is going to be the key new phases that we are seeing and helping the customers with. And the second thing is actually going to be all about these ML models that are actually creating specific insights. So the ML models for IDP, and then the models for the insights from your data that are going to be the two key things, in my opinion, that's benefiting everybody.
And thank you for that answer, Bhavesh. And I think I certainly agree. Those are two major areas where you need to start focusing immediately and have a perspective if you are going to implement, or when you're going to implement these technologies. And I want to get a little bit more tactical here. We've been talking broadly about organizations, their relationship with AI, AP. I want to talk a little bit about the technology, because that's ultimately where this conversation is coming from, right? We're seeing a lot of tools, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, where they're giving us toolboxes. They're giving us very, very powerful capability, but maybe not the container or the delivery method that we want, right? And then you have on the other side, we have RPA, we have UiPath, specifically with their AI services, which they're bringing, which are fully integrated into their automation stack. And then somewhere in the middle here, we're starting to see, I guess is an understatement. We have been seeing, and it's continuing to emerge, are these SaaS-based AI products that are solving very specific issues within the AP space, and within invoicing, and you had mentioned it within payments as well. So tell me, how are these tools impacting the market? How do you view them in relation to these other, again, very broad but very technically requiring tools like with AWS and Azure, or on the other side, the fully integrated automation stacks you're seeing with AI, UiPath rather?
Yeah, so we are seeing, so I would consider the automation and the cloud providers in one of those phases where like they have a big lumber basically that is trying to figure out, okay, how to do different furniture from that because their capabilities are so good and it's pre-cut and all those things, right? And then you got the SaaS player that are doing very specific use cases. That can be just making a chair, or that can be just making something else. I know it's a weird analogy, but that's really how I see it. Versus what I think, what I've tried to help the customers with is that, okay, we understand all of those technology ecosystem capabilities. We also understand what are some of the benefits that the SaaS model people are doing, which are very targeted and very specific into one area. We've talked about, all the way from supplier relationship management to the product info management to spend analytics and risk analysis and all of that, GL coding and everything in between, invoice processing. So a lot of SaaS players do one specific thing. What I think is beneficial is because we understand this technology landscape and capabilities that different providers have, because we know that this is how fast and how easy we should deploy it, we have created a unique way of packaging those technology elements together and providing as a SaaS solution to the customers so they get best of both worlds. And I think that's the way to go. And that's the way to go overall, in my opinion, in the AI, so that you don't actually end up having to, hire too many people or do a lot of upfront investment in technology, and you can still get the benefit that the technologies are giving you.
Yeah, and it's interesting you land on that. Two of the answers that we saw from one of our earlier polls, the major answer was ease of integration, right, and reliability. Yeah. And it feels like that again with the hyper technical tools, they're super powerful, but you need something. They're hard to integrate, and you need specialists in a lot of cases to really take full advantage of it. So it's easy here, interesting hearing your answer and seeing. Can you speak a little bit to how that packaging, Bhavesh, affects the ease of integration and reliability? I think will come out naturally as you discuss this?
Reliability and more importantly, reusability. For example,
Yeah.
right, if there are customers that have said, hey, I've invested into this cloud provider or this automation provider or this AI provider, because we know how do they work and how we can actually integrate them together to provide those final insights or process efficiencies and speed and all that, we can actually allow them to reuse that investment by packaging it together and still providing as our SaaS model. So they are actually also benefiting from the investment that they would have already made into something. And so I think those are the powerful things that customers can benefit from, rather than, hey, I did all this, but now I have to go with this provider, so my investment is wasted. We are making sure that that also doesn't happen, and still giving them the flexibility like a SaaS model.
Right, and flexibility like the SaaS in avoiding losing your technical debt to a certain extent is very important, especially as you're looking at these new technologies. Traditionally, we've seen these monolith implementations, right? They slow organizations down. There is a substantial amount of organizational risk, whether it be an upgrade or migrating to a new one. So it's going to be really important to have that modularity, to have that flexibility and reusability, quite frankly, to reuse these solutions across your processes, whether that's AI, RPA, or otherwise. So organizations at a crossroads. We've talked a bit about the technologies we're seeing. We've talked a bit about the flexibility requirements for them. How do they know if they are a right fit for these offerings? How do they know that, hey, this is where we are in our current life cycle with our technology and our technology and our processes? How do they know which tool is the right one?
Yeah, I think so. There is no one good answer to that. Every tool has their pros and cons as well, right?
Right.
So again, I would go back to that reusability aspect that, hey, you've already done something. Okay, that's good. We can actually take you to the next step journey from the things that you've already done, right? Where you already bought some AI model subscription, you have cloud subscription, you got some process improvement tools of BPM and RPA and all of that. Or you may even have a SaaS solution for a one tiny thing or two tiny things. That's okay. We actually have a very good understanding about how do we package it together to make their final solution, which is, again, I just oversimplify it to be really three things, which is the accuracy, the speed, of course, security is the foundation of it, and insights. And that's really how I actually see it. And so everybody, in my opinion, because of that reason, because of the reusability that we provide, is a good candidate of what we are trying to help them to go to the next steps of the journey.
Right, and I want to pick on something you said a little bit earlier in that answer, Bhavesh, but it's important for organizations, especially technology organizations that are working with clients, to be able to come in and understand the technology landscape. And so many times we see a variety of consultants, advisors, and people come in, you don't have the right tools. We need to go to the next tool. Oh, this isn't the right platform. We need another platform. There is such an importance to be able to use the existing technologies that are there to deliver value, which is going to ultimately keep the costs down, but also maintain the familiarity that the organization already has with these tools that are in-house, right? And, when we're looking for the right fit, I have, some slides up on the screen right now, but, reliance on legacy systems, limited visibility into processes, the complex and unruly processes, right? Beyond just going and lifting and shifting everything out, there's a mandatory understanding that needs to be had with these processes, regardless of complexity, to effectively implement these new SaaS solutions. It doesn't just work out of thin air. It comes with, internal knowledge of it and really having a group of people that are understanding what that final goal and outcome will be. So I want to dive a little bit into the legacy systems. I think that's, the one that historically RPA has really targeted, right? The automation of those legacy systems in the manual process. Now we're in the next generation of that, right? How is AI augmenting RPA or augmenting the legacy systems as well? So with the legacy systems, what are we looking to improve upon? What specific functionality within those legacy systems do we want to update, refresh, and remake so that we can provide value to the people of the company.
Yeah, so I think those legacy systems are actually, again, that's the beauty of what we are talking about. We don't need people to always have to spend money into new systems. We can work around those legacy systems and still be able to actually, make them more streamlined from end-to-end process perspective, as well as the data insight perspective. So I think that's one of the key benefits that I see in how we are approaching implementation of AI, as well as the operationalizing of it in some cases with intelligent automation.
And Bhavesh, especially with these well-established processes, these well-established systems, the people the people that make up your working party, your group, your stakeholders, right, is a lot of times just as important as understanding your process to make sure that you're productive. So, who should we be having these conversations with when we're going to look at the next generation of tools?
Yeah, so do not leave the business stakeholders and business owners out. The people who are the process owners, they have to be front and center of these discussions. The technology, stewards and experts and all them should actually, bring the capabilities and bring the suggestions to the business users, because business users sometimes may not be keeping up with latest capabilities that are out there. So it's a very good collaboration that has to actually happen, and that's why it's one not one or the other, but both of them working together is very, very key to this scenario.
That's great. And then, I want to shift our focus a little bit. We had talked about this a little bit before. I know we're coming up on the last 10 minutes here very quickly. I want to talk a little bit about in-flight AI capabilities, and I affectionately refer to them as in-flight because it's AI and how it's being applied as the process. Traditionally, with RPA, we've had human in the loop to answer these questions as they come up, and even with AI, you're still going to have some human intervention. Oh, I classified this question incorrectly. Oops, I hallucinated an answer here. Again, that's the importance of having strong data. Can you speak a little bit to how we're seeing these in-flight capabilities applied? We spoke about GL and fraud detection earlier. What else are you seeing specifically within the AP processing space?
So, like one of the easy things that I've seen, the benefit, like in accounts payable solution, for example, right? Because the supplier is trying to figure out where their payment may be or where their invoice is currently in the cycle. Being able to basically have automated, this is a little bit like chat with your data, but the generative AI can actually do those type of scenarios that, hey, you are easily able to get the information about it by, rather than bogging down your sourcing leadership people or your accounts payable people. You can do things like that. So there are a lot of those in-flight capabilities that you can, and so this is a very good example about how making sure that it's not going to give a wrong answer too much, and even if it gave it, it's not going to be like that much of a damning thing to an organization. So these are like good simple examples about how you can start with AI infusion right away in some of the areas of the process, and some you can continue to actually make better and better as you go forward. So those are like, this is the one. And so going back to, we talked about accounts payable, but now if you think about like, okay, sales order type of things, right? That you're trying to get a quotation from like some of the freight providers I know, they get thousands of quotation requests a day. Now, right. Before they would have had to like use people to like, go to the, source system and know the discount and do the quotation preparation and automate. Now with AI, in some of the cases, they are able to like just have AI answer those quotations and it will be accurate. So that's like the flipping of the accounts payable. We talked about where the payment is, in this case, what the quote looks like. So these are like good examples about how you can start using AI right away and still be very, confident about how it's not going to mess up anything because it's very likely not to have those wrong information.
Yeah, absolutely, Bhavesh. And I think, with all the solutions and examples you offered, what's really important is that these are impacting downstream processes. Nothing is happening in a vacuum, right? When we're testing and we're looking at it, we're saying, is it A or is it B? But the reality is once that result is generated, especially on something like a quotation, that impacts a whole value chain of how quickly now a customer is getting back to you, how quickly their payment is made to you, right? So really quickly, you start to see these, this value stacking that's occurring by bringing this technology in and utilizing it.
Yeah, and like look at this example that I mentioned, right? I know we digressed a bit, but like this is now helping you to even win the business that you may not have otherwise won, right? That because again, speed and accuracy are always important, no matter what part of the process you are. So the faster you can provide the code back, the more chances you may have to get that order versus not getting that order. So AI is not getting only used. And we've helped some customers with respect to how do you actually do the customer service better, how do you actually do this quotation management better. So it's not only helping you with the bottom line side of things, but it's helping you with the top line side of things as well. And that's somewhere where it is different than like traditional, just some of the legacy technologies that were more focused on just efficiency side of things and helping with the bottom line.
Right. It can certainly help with customer experience as well. If you're getting these things moving along. You don't have somebody clamoring to find out, is my invoice payment being delayed for some reason, right? That information's right there for them to learn about. So, Bhavesh, thank you for spending the past hour with us. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody.